Hey everyone, and welcome
Hey.
back. Hey Yashu, hey Terry.
Hi.
So welcome back everyone. This is our 10th live stream. It's all talking about Wildlife Vet Online Live. It's our 10th one. I can't believe it. We're approaching a year since we started these. So we're going to be joined by Dr. Peter Rogers in a minute. But yeah, just really excited to have this back. We last saw Peter last month when he joined us for the Wildlife Conservation in South Africa conference, online conference, which was a great success, wasn't it, Yashu and Terry? It was really
good. It's really great. Yeah, it's just such a fun time.
I know. So we're going to get him back in a minute, but I thought let's just have a quick look back and some of the highlights from that conference, just to show you, what that was all about. It's now an online course, so you're able to watch all the conference stuff in replays and still get involved, and also still check out some of Peter's stuff. So have a look at this.
Now the senior shark biologist at the ICT.
Perhaps the biggest success that I've had so far is actually to have survived so long.
Love that little highlights reel.
Such an amazing weekend, and I think you did such a good job at summing it up, Roger. Really nice. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so tonight's topic is going to be lions, and in case you guys haven't tuned into our 9 previous live streams, highly recommend watching them back on our pages. But we've had quite the variety, haven't we? We've had cheetah, rhino, even pangolins, elephants. But the lion module is upcoming for release, so we thought, what better time to release a little bit of lion content, talk about lions. And Terry, I hear lions is one of your specialties, isn't it?
Yeah, sort of. So I've done a bit of work over the years with lions and got some exciting work upcoming to finally, hopefully, answer one of the age-old debates of who's the better hunter, a lion or a hyena, but still to come.
Oh my God, exciting. Yeah, so we're so lucky to have you here today. And yeah, we're so lucky to have Peter joining us in a little bit as well, too.
Yeah, definitely. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you a video that Peter sent us a while back now, actually, about a lion relocation, or some lion relocations that he did. We're going to watch the video sort of in full. It's a couple of minutes long. And then after that, bring Peter on. And then he's going to talk us through in a bit more detail about exactly what happened, why, what he did, how he did it, and then get the questions going. So in the meantime, just a reminder, start sending any lion or wildlife veterinary medicine related questions in by commenting or typing your questions in the reply section, and we can answer them when we sort of get to the Q&A. But in the meantime, yeah, let's watch this. Have a look at this.
This is the female and the young male that escaped because they were chased by the big male that retreated last week. So we've got him back and we've treated him, but he's not looking too good. Now they've found the young male, who's his son, and the female. So we're going to try and dart them and take them back, but it's quite risky in the sense that you might only get one and the other one runs away. So we're going to give it our best shot and then we'll see what happens just now. So we're just going to check the female. Male's almost down. just take the dart out here. Yeah, I think we must get him out of the sun, eh? All right, so we've got these two lions back. We're going to put a collar on the big male so they can keep track of him. In case he goes back to the other side again, we know where to find him. And we're going to put a carcass just in front of them, so just keep them busy, get them something to eat. They probably haven't eaten for a while, so they're going to be a little bit wary of people. So we put a carcass in front of them if possible. Put the collar on. We're going to inject them for rabies. Rabies can be a problem in this area. And then long-acting antibiotics as well, and then we're going to wake them up. So this is the long-acting antibiotics, long-acting penicillin, just to, in case there's any infection from the dart wound, to stop any abscess formation. It's just preventative medicine, eh? Perhaps.
No, I was only anxious.
Still a little bit, let's just try. Oh, that's okay. That's cool. Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, we're just going to clean the wound quickly with some peroxide quickly, just to get all the pus out. You can see it's pretty clear now. So that's enough, and then we rinse it out with Ep.10. We've got there. Okay, these are obviously fight wounds. They picked up. And the drinks and all we're giving intravenously to wake them up. The other antidote was antipamazole intramuscular.
Wow, welcome back, Peter. Hello.
Hello,
Yeah.
Peter. Hi. It's so nice to see you again, even though it's like, I know it's only been a month, but like always good to see you again. How are you? How are things?
No, man, it's all going well. Yeah, no, we've just had a bit of a resurgence in COVID. You know, and I was talking to Roger early on. My assistant Janelle, who's like my right and my left hand, she was diagnosed positive today. So, and it was just, you know, the students were just starting to come out again. I mean, Roger knows exactly what it, and yeah, this is putting a huge spanner in the works. You know, I think it's that Delta variant which spread so quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit disheartening, and you know, a lot of our elected work is now being put aside again, and yeah, it just you know, it doesn't seem to go away, this bloody thing. Eh?
I know, it's been a year of these online live streams, and we always are saying the same thing about the pandemic. There's always a new thing coming up. I'm really sorry to hear that it's gotten tough again, and like you have been talking to us a lot about how you've been adapting to the pandemic. So yeah, that is kind of sad. It must have kept you really busy.
No, we have been, you know, very blessed in a way. We have been very, very busy. But it's just, this has again put a bit of a dampener on things. So yeah, I'm sure we'll get past it. I've had my first vaccine, and so, but yeah, it's still very uncertain times, you know, and we live in the middle of this big tourism belt. Yeah. And of course, tourism is just gone, you know, and so it's not fun.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well.
How are your exams? Yeshu?
My exams. Yeah. Oh my God! Thank you for remembering. Yeah. My exams went really well. Thank you. Yeah. You'll be happy to know I'm on my way to becoming a vet. I promise.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah. It's so nice of you to remember. All right. So, Peter, shall we get into lions?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Okay, so we just played everyone the video of the lion relocation, and I was wondering if maybe Roger could put it up again, and you could like talk us through what you were doing.
Okay.
Okay.
The female and the young male that escapes because they were chased by the big male that retreated last week.
So I've just turned the volume down a little bit, Peter, so then you can obviously go into a little bit more detail as you feel necessary.
Yeah, you see, this particular case was a reserve of about 14,000 acres. You know, obviously fenced. You know, so you know when the lions breed and the youngsters, you know, start getting a bit cheeky, and the young males, there's obviously a lot of fighting about dominance. And this is what happened in this place. The big male, the dominant male, chased this young upcoming male and his sister right through the fence into a reserve next door, But he also went through as well, and then he got beaten up by the pride on the other side. So we'd taken him back already, and then these ones had disappeared, and then they called us back a bit later to come and fetch these two, which were on the reserve next door. So this is quite a common, unfortunate, sort of side effects of animals not being able to migrate. Animals, breeding in controlled environment because of fences. Unfortunately, these are all the problems we sit with. When wildlife has been sort of fenced off from people, not to keep the animals in, but to keep the people out. And these are the sort of collateral damage one sees in animals going through fences because they've been chased by a dominant male or a territorial male. So this is all, we see this sort of stuff a lot. So we managed to, they found these two, went across, we took them. It was very, very hot. So, with all the anesthetics, one knows that the animal loses its ability to regulate its body temperature, in the heat. So we had to get it out of the sun quickly. And luckily, what they didn't show there also was that the one animal actually jumped up when I tried to put the cover over its head. I think the dart didn't go in properly or something, but I was glad nobody showed that. Then we took them back and we put a collar on them just to monitor them. And luckily they never went back again, for whatever reason. I don't know. They've stayed where they belonged, but yeah. So the story had a happy ending, but yeah, it was, you could see they had quite a few fight wounds. The big male who actually did all the chasing and followed these ones through, he really got badly beaten up. And it took him months to recover. So I think it might have been a bit easier for these two that escaped. This one that they're watching now, we clean the wounds, out with peroxide and with chlorhexidine, enable them to settle down a bit again. You see there, we're flushing the peroxide goes in just to clean up all the rubbish. And now all your professors tell you mustn't do it. And then the Ep.10, the chlorhexidine afterwards. And these were the antidotes we were giving. We were using BAM, butorphanol, azaparone, and midatomidine. So we were able to wake the animal up completely, and that was very important when you're working in the field like this, that you're actually able to wake the animal up so that it can, when you move off, or when the animal moves off, if it gets chased by something, it's able to defend itself. So that's what basically, in a nutshell, that whole operation there. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for talking us through that. And it sounds like, as we were talking about in the conference last month about the risks of being a wildlife vet, and sounds like plenty of those. I'm really glad that you're okay and that, the lion didn't get a chunk of you.
I've got something else. I don't know whether you can see it. I don't know where we are, but this was from this week, early on this week, where we.
Oh,
this
no.
Way. Yeah, that's what I got from this week. Yeah, that's from little cheetah cubs.
Oh no.
Yeah. So there's always something, eh?
Yeah, it seems like it. Yeah, you always have stories of all the injuries. I guess now is a good time to maybe open up to any questions. I don't know, Terry, if you have any that you want to ask Peter.
Yes, definitely. I'm going to apologize in advance. My internet connection's not great, even in civilization, so I might come and go. But a lot with translocating lions, a lot of the time we end up, this sounds a bit rash, but throwing them in planes and flying them across the country to a new place. I'm always curious, how does the change in altitude affect them while they're under, if it does at all?
Yeah, very good question, Terry. They're pretty much the same as humans. You can fly up to 12,000 feet. You can fly 12,000 feet, but no higher without oxygen, and they're pretty much the same. So that, together with temperature, it's very, very important, and it's something that we bear, closely in mind with any of those trips. Is the altitude, which is a very good question, which I don't think many people think about. And of course, temperature as well, body temperature. Yeah.
Thank you.
And of course, you've got to make sure the anesthetic lasts, eh?
Yeah. And also always the fear of, if they wake up, where do you go? Because at least in a vehicle, you can get into the cab.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Be very, very careful with the anesthetic, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be too light.
No, I don't think that would be a fun play date.
what a lot of the guys do these days also is they put a cargo net over the animals. If one was to wake up, shit happens, and if one was to wake up, at least you could be able to restrain it to top it up. That's what the book says. Yeah. So
contingency plans.
Yeah.
And then I just had one more quick question, which was a bit unrelated, but about contraception in lions. Is that something that's really well researched, or is it still sort of touch and go? Are we still figuring out how that works?
Yeah, Terry, again, another very, very good question. And that sort of alluded almost like to that video that you saw. I was talking about animals, multiplying in confined areas and then being chased out. And so this contraception, it's quite a big topic. There's a few ways you can do it. So in the old days, what they used to do, and I say the old days, but with respect, they used to just take out, like the males, they used to castrate them. And then the male would lose all his mane and all that sort of thing, and put on a lot of weight. So he would lose all his lion, if you like, male lion characteristics. And then the females, they do a complete hysterectomy on as well. But that's been modified more recently to the extent that we pretty much, the males, you can actually do a a vasectomy on them. You can do that, but then what that means is that the females, they get mated, but they keep on coming to estrus, and all these sort of the sort of side effects of that within the pride, the dynamics in the pride. These animals, coming to estrus all the time, so that upsets the pride dynamics a lot. Then there was also what the guys would do is they take out the one horn of the uterus, so that the cubs were born to be less in number. And then also what we're doing a lot up until fairly recently was we were using these deslorelin implants. It's a slow release hormone that stops the lioness from coming into season completely. She doesn't cycle whatsoever. It's a subcutaneous implant that you obviously got to dart the animal. You put this implant in under the skin, and it lasts for anything between 18 months and 3 years. We did it a lot, and it worked very, very well. But we did find that when you repeated it, that sometimes these females put on a lot of weight, and they form these polycystic ovaries, and then even the ones that had only been implanted once, we've had 2 or 3 cases where years later, that female actually developed a mane. Like I promise you, there's one that I see regularly, and we last did her years ago, and she's actually got a mane. So there's a lot of negatives. There's nothing that's perfect. So at the moment, what the guys reckon is that if you're going to just do it like as a once off, this implant, the subcutaneous implant, is good. But if you're going to repeat it or have to repeat it, then you've got to think of other alternatives. I know the guys now still, we've got some young females coming up soon, which we're going to do a normal spay, a hysterectomy on. The guys reckon it works very well. I was always worried about the animals putting on weight afterwards, but apparently they don't. So that would be the way to go. It's definitely not reversible, but that may be the thing. The other option, as sad as it may seem, is having to put the animals down, because, it's the same with the elephants, is that, worldwide elephants are endangered and lions are endangered, but where we are in South Africa, they've been pretty well looked after. So we've got localized overpopulation. And in the old days, even now, we still trying to, get lions. We've got these big sort of coordinating organizations, like, where we've got all the genetics and all places that have got lions for sale, not for sale. We just give lions away, but try and keep the genetics right in that. So even that is now sort of, running out of options. So this sterilization by either one of these methods, this subcutaneous implant of the hormones, or the actual, removal of the uterus, or if you want a vasectomy of the males, those are the options, those are the routes that one has to go. But you can't just let them multiply, because they like elephants as well. They're sort of the king of the castle, and before you can wipe the mist out of your eyes. Your place has got no antelope left because your lions have eaten them all. And if you don't control your elephant numbers, you've got no trees left. You've got animals that are dependent on trees for their existence. The birds that nest in them, other animals that eat the pods underneath them. So the bigger picture in these sort of controlled environments, it's very, very, it's very difficult to manage it. But unfortunately, one has to do it because the option to let them breed is you've just got to, you're going to have to cull them.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's a very complex. It's not just a simple answer to it. There are various ways of doing it, but each one has got its own drawbacks.
Yeah, it's very interesting, all the different challenges that we are faced with these days just by sticking a fence around an area.
That's
it's a whole
right.
new ballgame.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's right. Playing God. Playing God. Mm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually also have a question, and mine's a bit less complicated than Terry's, but I just have to ask because I saw it in the video. And I guess, like, as vet students, we are always told by vets, oh yeah, this wasn't in the textbook, but this is how you do it. So I just have to ask about your wound cleaning method, because it must have taken trial and error to figure out the best one. Why do you do it that way?
Yeah, true. You hit the nail on the head. I promise you, all your professors or anybody, in fact, my own colleagues, will have, they actually tease me because they reckon I've got a PhD or a doctorate in peroxide. Now, hydrogen peroxide is, I don't even know whether you guys even know that it exists, but everybody slates it because it's very corrosive. It does destroy, it does damage new tissue, but to me, it does a greater job in, it wipes out all the necrotic, all the dead tissue and pus in it. And remember, when you're treating wildlife, you can't come back every day or twice or 3 times a day and take a little bandage off and then spray some little antiseptic underneath and that, well done, that's so nice and still. I've got one chance to do it. So I go in there, I dart the animal, and then I use that peroxide, I mix it 50-50 with water. And sure, it has got its side effects, but there is nothing that cleans that wound as good as peroxide. Okay, so that cleans it. And then I use something like chlorhexidine, which is a very common, well, it used to be a common antiseptic in humans, but now apparently it causes cancer. I think, enough of anything will cause cancer. But so it causes cancer. So you can use iodine if you like.
Mm.
And long-acting antibiotics as well. But there's nothing, the wounds that we see with maggots and really rotten fight wounds and that. I mean, I've seen thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing that cleans and clears a wound up like peroxide does it. And in my career, I must have used 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of hydrogen peroxide. But your professors will slaughter you even if you mention that name. Never mind.
Yeah.
You'll never become a vet. You'll never pass.
Yeah, that's why I had to ask, because I saw it and I just had to know. I guess, the risk of infection is probably so high.
Yeah, but also to treat it again and again and again. That's what I always say. Some guys say, this drug doesn't work and this doesn't work. And the book says, I say, you know what? The book can say what it likes. But what's been seen cannot be unseen. Simple.
Yeah, that's a good way to practice. Okay. I actually think we have a question from the audience, which is, what are the most common procedures that you do on lions?
Okay. We do a lot of, my practice, we do mainly sort of clinical work. So it would be translocations, moving them from one place to another because of a local overpopulation in the one reserve versus no animals, or a new reserve wanting to introduce lions, or swapping out lions from genetic material. And then this contraception is a big thing. Even though we can't, there's not one method that's really foolproof. We still do it one way or the other, and so that's probably the most what I do. And then we do, unfortunately, in the areas that we work, the lions, these electric fences don't really stop, or they might chase something through an electric fence, or and then get caught in a snare or something outside, or they being pushed out of the area by, if it's a young male being pushed out by a dominant male. And we see, unfortunately, a lot of snare wounds, because as soon as they put foot out of there, they're vulnerable to being snared. And then fight wounds, they normally, bite wounds and fight wounds, cuts, if it's natural, if it's from a fight, we don't take it too seriously. We try and let nature take its course. But if we see it's not going the right way, then I must be honest, we do interfere. And then people say, but why do you interfere? So I say, well, aren't there 4 fences around this place already? Have we not interfered already by putting 4 fences around this place? This young male couldn't get away from his dad. So, we're obliged to help him. It's a man-made problem. So therein lies this whole ethical leaving thing up to nature. Where is nature? What is nature? Even the Kruger Park has got 4 fences around it, and it's bigger than Israel. So there the elephants can't migrate, so they just breed and breed and breed. And the greenies say you're not allowed to cull them, and you're not allowed to do this, and you're not allowed to do that. So they're just pushing all the trees over, and they're destroying the habitat of all the other animals that you don't see. Yeah, so getting back to the lions, probably the most common thing is the contraception and relocating.
Well, and then we have a question from RVC. Lauren is asking, what would lead you to keeping a lion in captivity as opposed to releasing it?
All right, so also a good question. It's something I see a lot, and I hear a lot. For a lion to be in a rehab center, so why is it there in the first place? Was it found in the wild that the mother rejected it? So let's take that as a yes. It was found in the wild. The vehicle was driving past, and they saw this cub lying there, and it was crying. All the guys will say, leave it. Let nature take its course. I can't do that. Firstly, I'll say, where is nature? Because there's fences around this place. So from my veterinary point of view, I can't just drive past an animal in distress and just leave it. I cannot do it. It doesn't matter whether it's an impala, it doesn't matter whether it's a lion. So that's how something like that could end up coming into captivity. All right, so that in itself becomes an issue then, because what becomes the future of that lion or lioness? It's now been used to humans. It's habituated. It's tame, if you like. And when I say tame, a very dear friend of mine was killed by one of his tame lionesses in November last year. Those were white lions that he rescued from a white lion breeding project because they were going to be shot. And he brought them to his house, and he used them as an educational tool. And, one gets a little bit blasé with them, and I said to him, West, one day, these lions are going to turn you into lion dung, into lion poo. And he said, oh, what a way to go. And it wasn't much longer later. So the point I'm getting at here is that they become very habituated. So you try and set that lion free. That lion's got no respect for you. And most lions are scared of you. You've got that barrier. If you walk in there, they'll run away normally, unless they've got cubs or something like that. Now, this lion doesn't know no fear of humans. So this lion could be hungry after a few days in the wild, and suddenly humans walk past, and he has a human's soft target, or even come back to the house, and one of the people walking around at night gets taken out. I've seen and I've heard of all of this sort of thing. Okay, so that's the one thing, is the danger to humans afterwards, and also they don't know how to hunt. So you've got to teach them how to hunt again, and they're not fit, etc., etc. And then the other way is, of course, you release that lion. You can't just go and dump it in another pride. It'll be dead before you've even turned your back. So, so a lot of things, generally speaking, captive, and you release them into the wild. Birds in this country, a lot of these birds, like martial eagles, they come in with a broken wing, and they fix it like at the Moalola Rehabilitation Center. And, everybody releases it, and they say, great, but, that thing hasn't gone 2 kilometers, and the territorial pair come and kill it, So there's a lot of, if you're going to, bring animals, into a rehab, and you're going to release them again, you've got to release them exactly the same area where they came from. So let's get back to the lions. So those are the two reasons: the lions, danger to humans, and then a danger to them. So I think those, if it was otherwise compromised, like a leg that was very badly injured in a snare, for example, that it couldn't be released again, then one could probably keep it as an educational tool, one you could say, to educate people about snaring or conservation in general, whatever. But to bring a lion out of the wild, take it away from its mother, specifically for being in captivity, I think that's bad. I haven't seen that, in my line of work, the lions that I've worked with, there's always been a reason. I had some lions that we confiscated from a traveling circus. They came all the way down from Egypt, and they stopped in Maputo, and these animals were flipping starving. And the local ladies in Maputo, the sort of SPCA, called us, and these animals, they were at the showgrounds in Maputo, these animals, and the Egyptian owner just disappeared. So the staff were trying to look after these animals, but there were tigers and there were snakes and there were dogs, and so these ladies were supplying food for these lions. But what they didn't know was that the keepers, the staff, were so hungry that they were eating the food, that was meant for the lions and that. So anyway, we got to hear about it, and we went and we fetched them and took them to the Hoedspruit Endangered Species Center and to Mahola Hall of tigers and lions. Yeah, so those are the sort of things, circuses and that sort of thing. Those animals are taken specifically from the wild, I would imagine, or bred in captivity specifically for something like that, which I think is terrible.
Those are all the questions we've got that have come through at the moment. Oh, actually, here's another one. Lauren's just sent another one, so good timing, Lauren. So Lauren says, what's your perspective on keeping breeding healthy big cats as education tools? You love that question, don't you, Peter?
Yeah, it's a difficult, that's a minefield, that, it can also be used as an excuse to have animals in captivity. It is a difficult one. There are animals that you can re-release into the wild. We're busy a lot with this at the moment. And one of them is the cheetah. Now, the cheetah, you can do that because it's not much of a threat to man. And we're busy on it with quite a big scale. I say I've just come into this sort of program recently where they are expanding the metapopulation, cheetah metapopulation from South Africa right through, hopefully right up to North Africa and even into India. Now, Africa, we've got these, it's called Africa Parks, which is a park. It's not a government organization. It's an NGO, if you like, but they've taken over a lot of parks throughout Africa that have been neglected and poached to hell and gone. And they've put in management structures, management tools, staff, anti-poaching units. And so now these reserves are actually starting to come right again and become viable and feasible to tourists to come in. And so now we're starting to reintroduce cheetahs into those areas as well. So some of these cheetahs, in fact, most of them, particularly for the future, are going to be coming from captive breeding centers, where you take the cheetah away at about a year of age. You take it out of there, and they go through a process of rewilding. Now, there's this guy, a German guy in South Africa, who's got a lot of money, and he's bought these big farms specifically to rewild these animals, teach them to hunt, so that you can successfully rehabilitate them back into the wild. And it's working well so far. To have a whole lot of lions or leopards in captivity, it depends on the circumstances where they came from. To breed them in captivity, that's a difficult one to answer. But to have them in captivity, and people say, well, why have you got them? I'll say, well, listen, if we hadn't brought it here, it would have had to be shot. And then people say, well, wouldn't that be better? And I say, you can't play God. If you did for a long time. So, yeah, it is a minefield. Education is certainly a tool, but to have a lot of one thing of the same species doesn't really make much sense unless you can release them back into the wild. And again, the wild is becoming smaller and smaller every day. It's a very noble a very noble thought. Yeah, let's release it back into the wild. But if you can show me where the wild is, I'll be the first person there. It's getting smaller and smaller all the time. So yeah, it's a minefield. There's so many different answers to that question. You know, none of them are right and none of them are wrong. I'll tell you what, the thing about breeding up, and this is where that question might have been coming from, is this breeding of lions in captivity. And I think, Terry, you know all about this. In South Africa, for canned lion hunting, absolutely disgusting, where these lions are bred and reared under usually terrible conditions in captivity, and then released, you know, a day or two before into a 50-hectare camp where some overseas hunter, you know, comes and shoots the thing, you know, and tells all his friends back in wherever he comes from how brave he was, and he shot this lion off his chest, and it, you know, nearly cut his ear off. And so that has now been banned, you know. And there was, I think, I don't want to lie, there's like something like 15,000-20,000 lions in this country that were in those conditions there. So that's now been banned, that canned lion hunting. But I mean, that's just straight exploitation. But now you sit with another problem, because all those lions that used to be shot or assassinated, murdered, their bones, besides the trophy going back to wherever it was in Europe or the States or wherever, those bones were legally exported to China. You know, as part of it, they killed all the tigers that side, so now they're using lion bones. So that was sort of filling a bit of a gap there. Now the captive lion bones are not there anymore. So what's going to happen? They're going to start going, the demand's still there, they're going to start going for the wild lions. Yeah, but anyway, at least that captive lion breeding has been pretty much knocked out.
I suppose the difficult situation comes in when something like COVID hits, and then all these places that, you know, potentially had, you know, wildlife as educational tools or to had them as a bit of rehabilitation are then losing out on, you know, any of the income that might have happened because of, you know, tourists or visitors not happening. And that's a whole different situation that's now opened up, isn't it?
Well, that's terrible. I mean, you know, HESCU, you know, I'm very, very closely attached to Hoedspruit Endangered Species Centre, or started off with the Hoedspruit Cheetah Project. They actually last week closed their doors for tourism, you know, and just because it wasn't viable to keep all the staff and to keep the doors open. Now, the tourism there paid a large deal, a large chunk of money to looking after the animals and staff salaries and sort of thing. And the same with the other little centre down the road, Mahola next door. It's helter-skelter there, you know. We're helping, you know, and people are helping as much as they can just to keep these places going, you know. Obviously, the priority is the animals' well-being, and we're making sure that's all okay. But it's not easy. It's tough times. It's really tough times.
Yeah, I've got a few other photos that I've got that you sent through a while ago as well, Peter, of you working with some lion as well. But before that, I know how everyone loves cat paws and sort of tracking and identification. So I wonder, Terry, if you could explain a little bit. I know. So here's I don't know how accurate this is as a lion footprint, or what you would say, and then here's an up close and personal one. You can see the difference between, you know, what it's sort of shown there with little indents at the bottom, and then what you can see there. Maybe Terry, you can tell us a little bit more about how you tell the difference if you're tracking and you see a paw print in the sand.
Okay, well, the two pictures you brought up are actually a very good indication of the difference, because the first one's a dog paw and the second one's obviously a lion because it's attached to a lion. But one of the very, well, I say easy, but if you've got perfect soil and all the conditions are great and the environment works with you, then one of the easy ways to see the difference is you'll notice with this lion picture, the back of the pad of the paw, there's 3 lobes. And that's normally very indicative of cats. So they've got those 3 lobes. And then another thing that you would use is in a cat, bar a cheetah, in a cat you would generally see any claw marks. So with the original first picture, where it was just, if we can pick the first picture up.
Yeah.
This one. So you'll see there's quite a big difference in the bottom of the pad. This just basically has like I don't know how to explain it, but sort of a squiggle instead of the distinctive W or M shape, depending which way you're looking at it, then the claw marks would be indicative of the dog, unless, of course, it's a cheetah, in which case you would have that W shape and the claw marks. And then also size is generally a good indication. So a lion, you generally know it's a lion because it's basically the size of your face versus a leopard, which basically looks like a cartoon. It's weird to explain, but leopard paw prints look like they're fake. So yeah, that's just some of the things that are sometimes used to identify paws.
So other than size, what's the difference between a domestic cat and a wild lion or something like that?
Well, if size isn't a clear giveaway, then you've got an interesting domestic cat on your hands. But also the spaces between the tracks as well, because if your paws are, say, that far apart, you can generally guess the size of the animal that's leaving the tracks as well. And then also the amount of hair in between the pads also is a good indicator of the type of species. So for example, like a brown hyena is very fluffy track, and also the sizes and the difference between the front and the back paw are also good indicators.
Peter, do you have to do any on-foot tracking these days? I know you do a lot of darting from helicopters and stuff like that, but is there times when you're then having to go really old school and start to track on foot?
Yeah, we do, but the golden rule I've got there is I just make sure. Luckily, it doesn't happen often, but my golden rule is I take at least one person. I'll take the person I take with me. It's just got to be slower than me, so we have to run. Then I'm in the clear. No, we do, but yeah, it's luckily not all that often, but sometimes we do. Yeah,
there's a good joke about that. I don't know, probably along the lines of what you're thinking, saying whenever you are in the wild, always do take someone slower than you, so that if you do have to turn and run away from a wild animal, that you're not going to be the first.
Yeah, I've done it a lot, but more so in the past. But these days, we can, preferably from a vehicle or from a helicopter. Yeah. Sable and that sort of stuff, animals in big camps you can do, but that's not an issue. You can do those on foot, but when you start working with a big five, for example, I still giraffe on foot. I'm not worried about those sort of things, but buffalo, rhinos, elephants. Well, elephants we do on foot as well, but yeah, I don't do the hell of a lot. That's why I'm still here.
Yeah, sure. We've got another question from RVC for you there.
Oh yeah, we have a question for Terry about tracks. Lauren's asking, how do you differentiate smaller wildcats like Serval or Caracal?
It's a very good question, because this is something even I struggle with, because they're so similar. So oftentimes a good way to differentiate between the tracks is, firstly, what environment are you in? Is it the type of habitat that a Serval or a Caracal would be in? Because they do sometimes operate in different areas. And does a Serval even occur in the area that you're working in? Because Caracal occurs in areas that Serval may not. So Serval prefer more wet habitats and Caracal drier habitats. But if they do happen to both occur there, it is quite difficult. Other types of things, again, like I said, the gait of the animal, so the size difference between the tracks can be used. Generally, then you have to start getting down and dirty and measuring right down to the centimeters of the track. Open your guidebook and sit there for a good while, unless you're a professional tracker, which I take my hat off to those guys because they're incredible. But for us less experienced people, generally the guidebook in hand, the ruler in hand, hopefully a more experienced person next to you. And then also other signs like scat can also help you if you're lucky enough. But yeah, that's quite difficult when you're working with species that are very similar.
Lauren, if you're interested, I don't know if you have spotted it, but Terry's got a introduction to ecology and large carnivores, little sort of mini course out with some more on the way as well, which we're very excited about. So go and check that out. It'll have more details. And then also there's something that Yashu had a part to play in sort of developing a sort of a junior wildlife vet online course, which has got some animal identification bits, which is really fun. So go and check that out, Lauren, or anyone else watching. Peter, I've got, I don't know if you guys have got any other questions, but I was looking at some other photos you sent through, and I just wanted to bring them up. Now, obviously, covering, I see a lot in the courses about sort of covering any wildlife you're working with, their faces up and stuff like that. Do you want to talk us through some of the reasons around that?
It's interesting. There are some vets who don't believe in it, and I can't make a call because they say it works fine. But I would say the main reason, there's probably, let's see, the main reason is you want to protect the animal. So sometimes you're working on an animal and it's not, completely asleep. So it enables, if you put a cloth or a cover like that over the eyes, it makes it safer for the animal because it feels more secure in a dark, closed environment. But it also makes it safer for the person who's actually handling that animal, because sometimes, depending on the cocktail you use and the sort of dosage, the level you're working with the animal, it can suddenly get up and bite you. So it's actually safer both ways, for both the animal and for the human being. But also remember, the eyes where these animals stay open under anesthesia. So the eyes are open all the time. They're exposed to the sun, the harmful rays of the sun. So it's also just to protect them, and so any sort of physical damage like grass or branches if you're carrying it. And then we also put an ointment into the eyes, an oily ointment that's also got an antibiotic in it that keeps the cornea moist, stops the eye drying out, and an antibiotic just to prevent any secondary infection perhaps. So that's why we cover the eyes. I think it works both ways. It protects the animal and it protects us as well. I think it's humane. You don't leave something lying in the burning sun with its eyes staring straight into the bright sunlight. That's digressing again a little bit, but that's when you're working with animals and they're under anesthetic, they're at your, at your disposal, they're at your mercy. So you better have respect for that animal. And respect, it means you handle it, even though it can't feel it. You handle it with care. You don't throw it in the back of a bucket. You treat it with care, respect, and compassion. And that's one of the things. You cover its eyes so its eyes don't. Would you like to look into the sun? So those are the sort of things. It's just humane. It's just being humane and empathetic.
Is that before or after you put the catheter in, for example?
Depending, if I'm worried, it doesn't really matter. Depending on the species, I judge each situation on its own. If the animal's very, very asleep, we'll put the catheter in first because that is your passport to peace. If you've got trouble with the anesthetic, either way, at least you've got access to the animal. The cloth over the eyes takes a bit of time. You can put that over later.
Thank you so much. That's all, everything from me. I don't know if Terry or Yasha, you've got anything else you want to bring up lion related?
Ooh, yeah, I do have a little question about livestock, because I have read a couple articles about clashes with lions hunting livestock, and I was wondering, because you're quite big on community engagement and mediation, as a wildlife vet, do you have any part to play in mediating this problem, or have you found it to be a big issue?
Yeah, I'm not on that side. The only side I see is when these animals get caught in snares, or they and then get caught in snares and they break off the snare and they run around with the snare around their neck or their foot. So I'm not really involved in the compensation or the negotiation sides. That's more the provincial guys, but it's a big problem, And it comes back to what I said. I've said it several times in the past. Is we've got all these fancy reserves, and with the ever increasing human population, there's going to be more and more pressure on the resources in these reserves. The people living on the outside say, look, I've got all this grass and there's trees and wood, and they're just using it for themselves, these rich little people, What about us starving guys on the outside? So unless they can actually benefit from what goes on in there, for example, if it does come out and kill one of their cows, I can say, okay, look, it doesn't really matter because in a month's time, they're going to be culling 2 or 3 elephant, for example, and we'll be getting the meat. So there's a bit of a trade-off, whereas most of the times it's just one-way traffic. There's no real compensation. So those animals, so basically what happens now is that if a lion or an elephant gets out of a reserve and, it's causing hassles in the community, gets destroyed. So that's tough. And to mediate, you can only mediate so much. So people can only say, "Listen, I've lost 6 cows already. I'm not getting any benefit from your reserve." So it's something. We could talk about the legalization of rhino horn trade. For example, what's happening in Kruger, in the Kruger National Park, where they've got tons and tons and tons and tons of rhino horn. And yet you've got the population on the outside, people who are living below the breadline. And one must remember that the rhino horn is a sustainable, what do you call it? Commodity. You don't have to kill the animal to use it. So what's happening now is that these rhinos are being poached. You won't believe they're just going one way, but despite all our dehorning. And the horns are being taken, and by the poachers and that. But then also now we're doing these massive dehorning programs, and that horn is just being stored in a vault. If you could say, for example, and this is only my own point of view. I mean, I'm not saying it's right. If you could sell that horn, and then these people could see, the people on the boundary, they could get the money, schools and education, general upliftment of the area, then that's okay. It's worth looking after this rhino. We'll kill those bloody poachers next time they come in. At the moment, it's the other way around. They're helping the poachers. So, you can't. These reserves cannot exist in isolation. But if you don't have the buy-in of the local community, you're dead in the water.
Yeah, I guess it's all quite, delicate. I do have another question regarding community outreach, and you mentioned like the use of lions in traditional medicine, and there's probably a lot of misconceptions. Do you, again, as a vet, do you have any role to play in like maybe public perception of traditional medicine or anything like that?
The traditional medicine, the perception is not really so much on this side. It's more in the East, the consumers there in China and Vietnam and those places, And as I've said about the rhino horn, people talk about educating people that, the rhino horn is just a fallacy, it's got no medicinal properties at all. You've got to, as I've said before on this show, that, you've got to be arrogant to believe that you can change a tradition that's older than Christianity in our 100 years on earth. So you're never going to change it. In time, that all the rhinos are not dead. So if you can't beat them, join them. It's a sustainable. It's not nice, but it's a sustainable option to make it that the rhino can actually contribute to its own survival without actually having to die. It's interesting because people say, but a rhino without a horn is not a rhino. It's quite arrogant to say that, but when I see a rhino with a horn these days, I say, gee whiskers, look at that. The normal has become the other way. I make excuses for it, but the fact of the matter is that, the survival of the rhino species at this stage is very dependent on the dehorning at the moment. And as far as I'm concerned, the future sale of rhino horn, education is not going to work. You don't have the time. Don't have the time. All the numbers of rhinos left to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair enough answer. And I guess
so the bones, that again, that's an age-old tradition. That is a big problem because you have to kill the lion to actually utilize those bones. So what you're going to find now, because all of these this captive breeding and murdering and butchering of these lions, as so-called sport hunting, that has not come to an end. So I mean, there's bones from thousands of lions per year that would have gone to the east for medicinal uses is not there anymore. So where they're going to go? They're going to go back to the wildlands.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's no easy fix, and like you said, a lot of these practices are just so rooted down, like have been going on for years and years and years. So,
Terry, what do you think?
What do I think?
So what does Terry think? She's a South African. About our problems here with the protein.
Sorry, the internet's been a bit dodgy, so I've been coming and going.
Oh, okay. No problem. I just wondered what your opinion was on, the poaching issues we have here, and the perhaps the answers to them, solutions to the rhino poaching and the elephant. Well, the elephant and the lions are coming now as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the bits that I caught, as you mentioned, it's something that's not going to change overnight. It's such a day-old tradition. Is something not only just set in people, but it's a very emotional topic. And when you start dealing with people's emotions, then things become very complicated. But yeah, it's definitely not something we're going to fix overnight. I was speaking to a friend of mine who had a researcher from China come over, and they still firmly believe that rhino horns drop off and regrow. So there's still so much education that needs to happen. But again, you're fighting against propaganda and, again, tradition and those type of things. But it's definitely, it's such a layered issue, and there's definitely no quick solution to it. I mean, even with the lion poaching, it's not something that's as prominent or regularly spoken about, but in reserves that I've been associated with over the last couple of years, if a lion had to be euthanized for whatever reason, if that body wasn't buried, you'd come back a week later and the paws were chopped off and the skull was gone. So it's something that's still very prominent within the communities. And it's exactly that. It's because the communities are impoverished. It's an easy solution. It's an easy way to get access to finances. And also, if you don't include your communities within your work in conservation, then you're not giving them a reason to want to protect anything. So you need to start at your fence line. Those people are living right there and being directly affected by the reserve. So even something as simple as just educating the people, bringing them in. If you're darting an animal, bring the school kids in for a bit and show them, be like, hey, so you can start to create these connections between the people outside the reserves and also within the reserve. So it's not a disconnected line of outside and inside. It's this complete connection between the reserves. Further north in Africa, they've started projects where, sorry, I sometimes forget to breathe. Fundamentals of being human, doing great. Like I was saying, further north in Africa, they started these projects where they're bringing women into not so much anti-poaching, but anti-poaching type projects, where now those women they've gone from just being members in their community to being fully entrenched within the reserves and having a role to play. And when you feel like you have a role to play, then you're a lot more willing to protect things. So yeah, there's so many different facets, and we may not be able to change tradition, but at least we can change the community outreach on our doorsteps and education on our doorsteps. So we can't change the world, but we can at least make an effort within our direct influences. So there's definitely a lot of options out there, and people are working incredibly hard. And yeah, it's something that's going to take many, many years, and hopefully the animals are still around to survive all these changes that are still to come.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so I don't have any more questions coming in, unless there's any more from you, Yashu or Terry, that you want to ask Peter directly.
No, I think that's everything from me. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone who watched this live. If you're watching on a replay, still keep sending in questions, and we can always get back to you on the next stream we do. And if you want to find out more about sort of Peter's work, how do I do it? There we go. Up that little above Yashu there, that little QR code over there. Other way. There we go. It's backwards. Yeah, there we go. That little QR code will take you directly to some more details on Peter and all the amazing work he's been doing with us to develop some, these fantastic courses that we sort of been rolling out. Really looking forward to the line module, which is going to be coming up soon. As soon as we all get a chance to put that together, we'll be releasing that to all of you. So thank you so much. Peter, once again, thank you so much for joining us. So great. Sharing your words of wisdom. Terry, thank you so much. Yashu, as always, thank you so much. Next live stream will be, there's the little thing down there, will be on the 3rd, I'm getting a little better at that, the 3rd of August, same time, same place. Send us details, any questions in the meantime, and we'll answer the next time around. Otherwise, from us, thank you so much. Great to have you all on board. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Catch up. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Guys.
Thank you.